So what's the political fallout of these campus encampments that we've seen, and finally the police moving in on many of these cities? Well, I can tell you that in one case, University of Alabama, both the pro-Hamas protesters and the pro-Israel protesters, they did find one thing they could agree on. Take a look. Yes, that's right. The unmistakable chant of "Let's go, Brandon." So we'll start with you, Akash. Joe Biden is definitely harmed by this politically. That's why they dragged him out to finally make a statement yesterday, after all was said and done, a little too late. But he's feeling the pressure not just from the normies, as we've been saying, but also from the left. I mean, he tried to play it so he could please Dearborn, and it turns out he's not pleasing anyone.
No, that's exactly right. That's why he waited so long to say anything about this. It's not just that he can't complete a sentence normally, it's that he didn't know what to say because he is hamstrung by fear, because his administration is run by radical progressives, right? These young, woke, far left staffers who agree and applaud these pro Hamas protesters when, again, the vast majority of Americans have absolutely no patience for this stuff and they don't support it. And so he's not only annoying the vast majority of Americans who oppose this stuff, he's now, of course, also angering his progressive base when he tries this both sides equivocation thing. The speech he gave just the other day, I thought was an absolute embarrassment. He's bringing in other forms of discrimination and other victim groups and things like that. He can't just clearly come out and say point blank anti Semitism is bad, Hamas is bad. That's absolutely ridiculous, frankly, that he can't just say that. And I think if he were willing to do so, it would cause him far less political harm than what he's facing right now.
Yeah, you're right. And Robert, this is the same week where Donald Trump said, look, at the way things are going right now, I don't see how a two-state solution is possible. One state, and that one state would be, the one legitimate state, Israel, who belongs to be there. It's their nation. And that's why I want to bring you into this, because you've worked in the State Department in the past. The thing about these protests and why it really hurts Biden is that it's happening because of a larger failure across the entire Middle Eastern region, thanks to the Biden agenda there.
Yeah, look, foreign policy is a complete disaster under this administration. I spent time, there are 22 countries in the Middle East, and I've been to most of them, not to Iran. But this administration, as I think Robert Gates said, makes every single decision wrong. And what they really do is they show up to the party late, they're reactionary, they're not proactive. And they invariably get it wrong. Afghanistan, and I mean, just pick your poison. I mean, Iran and appeasement, and triggering the terrorist activities across and inviting Russia into Ukraine. It's really a walking, talking disaster. And I think the average American, to be honest, I don't think the average American is a pessimist. I think they look at the Middle East and they say, with mature leadership of the kind that Reagan provided, and frankly, even Jimmy Carter at one point relative to the Middle East provided, you can get progress. But just picking sides and then just pretending it's some kind of a ping pong game. Biden is really not up to the job of anything. I mean, and he's lacking in the basic maturity required. Never mind the senility part. He's basically not able to understand the stakes that are afoot here. And every time he talks, you just learn once more that the guy is just not competent. He's an empty chair.
Yeah, and I believe Robert Gates' direct quote was, Joe Biden has been wrong about every major foreign policy issue his entire career. That goes back to Vietnam, of course. And Matt, I don't understand how Joe Biden doesn't make a daily statement to the media, the world media, that is very simple. We don't do anything about this issue in the Middle East until our hostages are brought home. Release the hostages. Bring them all home before we talk about anything else. But I've hardly heard him mention the hostages ever.
It's actually the opposite. He is more eager to bring in Gazans to America than he is to bring the Americans in Gaza back. And that's kind of where they're putting their energy. But think about it this way. I mean, Biden has been basically a terrorist best friend for decades. 13 years ago yesterday, we got bin Laden, right? And who opposed that? Joe Biden. What does he do? His first year in office, he says to the Taliban, you're legitimate now. Here's all of Afghanistan. Here's, first world army. And turn your country into a terrorist training ground. And now we're seeing President Biden and college presidents make the same mistakes. They're trying to appease terrorists. And that's what's going on in these colleges. They're terrorizing everyone. And that's, of course, what's going on in the Middle East. But at this point, it's kind of too late. And you see this politically for Joe Biden, right? The left, these insane people, are not down with him because they hilariously think that he's too pro-Israel. But I think this, you can look at this in one of two ways for him in November. Is it like 2016, right, where the left was so anti-Hillary that a couple tens of thousands of votes for Jill Stein helped elect Donald Trump? Or is it like 2020, where this is all just kafia cosplay? They don't actually care about any of this. They just don't want to have finals, which is also very possible. And they say, whatever, we hate Trump so much, we'll vote for Biden, even though we're saying that he is supporting genocide, which is, of course, laughably false. But I think those are the two paths for him politically. But the mistake he made was thinking that, hey, if you give them a little bit, right, if you give a Palestinian activist a cookie, you're making a big mistake.
Kafia cosplay is brilliant, and I'm going to steal that, Matt Foley, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Look, Larry, you can plagiarize me like Joe Biden.
Gosh, listen, Americans for Prosperity, you guys are mobilized and set up in so many states around the country, and I know in the Midwest, you have a strong presence there. This whole play for Dearborn, for this one Rashida Tlaib district outside of Detroit, Michigan, I understand there's a lot of votes there. But guess what? There's a lot of Jewish votes, not just in Michigan, Birmingham, Bloomfield Hills, Novi, Livonia. There's also a lot of Jewish votes and just Americans who might not be Jewish, but love the state of Israel and are aligned with the state of Israel. This is vastly unpopular. I think the last poll was 4 out of 5 Americans support the Netanyahu government. That's stronger the support than Bibi has in Israel. So this play for the radical extreme of Rashida Tlaib's district, could this be a boomerang for Joe Biden, that he's completely misplayed it?
There's no question about it. Look, we're the largest conservative activist organization in the country. And it reminds me of the Tea Party days when Americans for Prosperity expanded enormously with our activist base, because you had people who had never previously identified with the cause of the day joining up with conservatives, right? That's exactly what happened in the Tea Party wave. You had people who really had, no other involvement in politics, that were upset about federal spending and the bailouts and things like that. Today, it's the same thing, where you have what was once just kind of a conservative right versus left political dynamic. You've got normal people who may not agree on other issues say the progressive left is way out of whack on this issue. Biden is beholden to them. I can't stand this stuff. I'm going to be a lot more open to voting Republican or becoming a conservative than I ever have. And it's all because he's chasing after this far left progressive audience, whether it's on this Palestinian issue or it's on other issues. He's completely beholden to the radical progressives, and it's turning Americans of all stripes away from him otherwise, whether it's swing voters, suburban voters, other minority voters, what have you. The president just simply has terrible political instincts, and I think the conservative movement and the Republican Party stand to gain from it if we play our cards right.
Yeah, and Robert, from an AMAC perspective, American Association of Mature American Citizens, I've got to think this is wildly unpopular too. Most people I know that are 55 and older, they're on the side of Israel, always have been, because we're old enough to remember what Intifada looks like. We remember Yasser Arafat. I mean, he's on the wrong side of this issue in such a brazen way.
You're absolutely right. I would go a step beyond everybody else talking here, because I think this is devastating for him. AMAC does represent the conservatives over the age of 50, sort of the opposite side of the AARP world. And there are millions of AMAC members and tens of thousands just in the state I'm in here. And they are, I wouldn't say apoplectic, they're mature, but they look at this and they say, what in God's name is in your mind? I was just at a convention the other day, and I listened to Susan Collins talk, interestingly, very moderate, even liberal Republican, perhaps one of the most liberal in the Senate. And she was railing on progressives. And you have to say to yourself, look, when the moderates start to go after the progressives and Joe Biden supports the progressives, your whole boat is sliding sideways. And I think this is what's going on with Joe Biden. He has become the appeasement president. He appeases Iran, Russia, China, and now Hamas. And there's no room for it.
The appeasement president will have that be the last word, because it's a damn good one. Yeah, this president finally said something yesterday, but it was only after the dirty work was done, after the cops moved in and actually showed leadership, and the governors of those states showed leadership. Would have been great if a week ago he had said, rule of law, this cannot stand. I'm calling on these governors to do something about it. Republican governors did something about it, but the Democrat governors, they waited, they heard nothing, Finally, they did something. And then Joe Biden leading from behind. It's going to hurt him big time politically.